You're watching This Week in Louisiana Politics with Fred Childers.
Good Sunday morning to you. I'm Fred Childers. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. Recipients of the National Flood Insurance Program can rest easy at least for a few months. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill sealed a 4-month-long extension, keeping the initiative intact through November. Now, the measure passed both chambers of Congress by large margins. But as Capitol correspondent Harrison Golden tells us, recipients in Louisiana still face plenty of uncertainty.
As the U.S. Senate stared down a midnight deadline on the National Flood Insurance Program,
this was a small victory, and it could be a temporary victory.
Senator John Kennedy joined 85 other senators Tuesday voting to keep the program afloat through November 30th. The 7th short-term extension for the NFIP will grant a 4-month bridge for policyholders to renew their coverage.
A lapse does disrupt real estate transactions for the 2,600 Americans trying to close on their home, perhaps their first home, over the next couple days.
Both Louisiana senators backed the extension, led in the lower chamber by House Majority Whip and Jefferson native Steve Scalise. Louisiana in particular has leaned on the program heavily following numerous floods and hurricanes over the years. The state currently has some 500,000 NFIP policyholders, second only to Texas and Florida.
Therefore, I urge my colleagues to expedite consideration of the National Flood Insurance Program 4-month extension and pass it by unanimous consent.
But the support that followed Tuesday was not unanimous. Critics and even some who voted for the extension say reforms are long overdue. The program has run deficits dating back to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Opponents say it encourages people to remain in flood-prone areas, only to come face-to-face with more damage.
I have a lot of sympathy and in many cases agree with a lot of the points made by those in opposition. I'm not happy with crappy either. But I don't want there to be, at any point, a gap in coverage.
Proposed long-term changes to the program have remained largely stagnant this year. Congress's new deadline for steering the NFIP coincides with the so-called lame duck session, that block between the midterm elections and the new arrivals on Capitol Hill. For your local election headquarters, I'm Harrison Golden.
The extension also has the support of President Donald Trump, who signed the short-term renewal last week. I was able to speak with Senator Bill Cassidy by phone the day after he secured that vote. Here's what he had to say from his Washington office.
Hey, Fred, how are you, man?
Hey, Senator, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So I guess we can, I know we don't have a whole lot of time. We can fast forward. We know the bill has passed. And just real quick, without getting too far into the weeds, how were you able to get this passed? Did you attach it to another bill?
No, it was a bill by itself. It had come over from the House. Steve Scalise did a great job of setting it up. There were folks on our side who objected to the bill. I went to them, called them, saying, listen, this is only a reauthorization. It's a current law. We carry it forward for 4 months. That gives us a chance to work on reforms. They want reform, so do I. I just had to explain that this wasn't putting in current law forever. It's just allowing us more time to work, and they signed off. It was a good project.
How encouraged are you to see it was an 86-12 vote, 86 for, 12 against. Seems like a pretty good bipartisan effort.
A really good bipartisan effort. Obviously, we're trying to set up another bill which would have reforms that would make the flood insurance program more affordable, more sustainable, and more accountable to the taxpayer, more affordable to the homeowner. So if we can get that sort of vote on our reform package, I think we can accomplish our goal ultimately of having a long-term reauthorization, but with things that make it more affordable.
Right. And what are the what's going to happen now that the extension is in place? How does this benefit families?
The Senate needs to, well, first, the benefit of the extension is that if you were closing your house or renewing your flood insurance today or tomorrow, the bill is still, you still can. that would have been interrupted. It's not interrupted now. That's a good thing. Secondly, it removes any uncertainty. We know that we'll have a flood insurance program as we head into the peak hurricane season. And then longer term, again, that vote you mentioned signals that the Senate is interested in the flood insurance program, and I hope that creates momentum to consider a broader bill, and that's what will really benefit the homeowner by, again, making those premiums less expensive.
Does the bill that passed, does it also address the, I guess, what could be described as bad timing for it no longer being in effect?
Oh, yeah, totally. This extension goes for the next 4 months. That brings our country through hurricane season. I think that's one thing people realized. It wasn't Louisiana last year. We were the year before. Last year it was Texas and Florida and Puerto Rico. So folks understand the importance of the program. They understand the importance of reform, but they understand the importance of the program, and that's why we got that big vote. But again, I had to first call folks who were opposed to allow the vote to go forward.
And this has been signed off on?
Yeah, the president will sign this into law. He's probably signed it into law last night. I didn't follow the news. But we now have a flood insurance program today, and that's what was in doubt.
And at last check, it was signed. With less than 100 days until the 2018 election, a bipartisan coalition is doubling down on its effort to rid the state of a Jim Crow-era law still on the books dealing with jury decisions in felony criminal cases. And as Capitol correspondent Harrison Golden reports, that law has long separated Louisiana from the rest of the country.
This is something that is a stain on the legacy of our state, and it must be removed.
Former Grand Parish District Attorney Ed Tarpley says it's a law that many people don't even know exists. Unlike most other states, Louisiana only requires 10 of 12 jurors to agree on a defendant's guilt for a felony conviction. Voters will have a chance to change that, though, November 6th.
This message has to be targeted, it has to be effective, it has to inform the people that are going to vote.
Between now and November, a bipartisan coalition will craft a digital marketing campaign to notify voters of this law that's been on Louisiana's books since 1880.
There's no question but that the law was changed for the specific purpose to make it easier to convict the newly freed slaves. It was designed to affect a certain specific group, yet in the end, it wound up affecting everybody.
Hopes to lift that law rose this past spring when legislators passed a referendum on unanimous juries. The support overwhelming from conservative and religious activists, as well as the civil rights advocates on the left.
Once you make people realize that across the spectrum, regardless of affiliation, of race, they go, no, I don't trust government, and I don't want to make it easier for them to lock me up.
But State Senator J.P. Morrell says before he drafted the resolution to put this issue on the November ballot, some of his fellow lawmakers didn't even realize that split juries are allowed in Louisiana. And he hopes the next 100 days will be enough time to spread that word to voters across the state.
It's a thing. And without you going to the ballot box to vote, it will continue to be a thing for the foreseeable future.
So far this year, no public organizations have campaigned against requiring unanimous juries for felony convictions. For your local election headquarters, I'm Harrison Golden.
And if Louisiana voters do, in fact, move to change the state's verdict law, it would apply to felonies committed on or after January 1st. For now, the only other state that allows non-unanimous verdicts in felony trials is Oregon. Coming up next, I sat down with Attorney General Jeff Landry. We talked about his new position as the head of a national organization, his dust-up with Governor John Bel Edwards over Louisiana's death penalty, and is he running for governor? Try to get a yes or no from him. That's next on This Week in Louisiana Politics.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back to This Week in Louisiana Politics. For this segment, we're on location, obviously, and we are at the Attorney General's office. And, of course, joining me now is Attorney General Jeff Landry. General Landry, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
You were just recently named the president of the National Association of Attorneys General. What does that entail? What are you going to do with that?
Well, it's a great honor. It certainly gives Louisiana an opportunity to be at the table of discussions that are happening on a national stage with attorney generals from around the entire country. So the organization is a bipartisan organization made up of all 50 states' attorney generals and those attorney generals from territories and Washington and the District of Columbia. So it's a great organization.
Yeah, you want to take on a couple of initiatives. What are those?
It is. So each year when they change the president of the association, that president gets what's called a president's initiative. So they get to pick a topic under which, over the course of the next year, in my case, it's going to be the next 18 months, they can try to educate or bring to the meetings that we have on an annual basis. We have a couple of meetings a year. That initiative, whatever that initiative may be, our initiative is what we chose was disaster management or crisis management.
Very important here in Louisiana.
Yes, well, something that we really experienced with, unfortunately, here in Louisiana. And it was broad enough so that we encompassed not only natural disasters, but mass shootings as well. Any time that the government is strained with its resources at a moment's notice to provide protection to the public.
Right. Do you worry about things like I know during some of the hurricanes there were issues with price gouging for things like gas and stuff like that. Does your office handle things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what we've found, and it's kind of ironic because the National Center for Disaster Fraud is right here in Baton Rouge. So anytime there's a natural disaster, and the potential for people to go out and defraud any federal or state program designed to bring citizens relief, that there is a center which is located in Baton Rouge that handles all of those calls. And so as Attorney Generals, we normally are the caretaker of consumer protection, and that would entail things like price gouging, contractor fraud, any type of fraud that might occur where the consumer may be scammed or defrauded out of money.
Right. Well, as the president, this is going to be your initiative, but this isn't something that you're just going to talk about, correct?
No, we're going to bring speakers in. We're going to bring, we're going to talk and bring high-level speakers in to our meetings and have panels to discuss best practices so that we can share some of the things and the experiences that we've had here in Louisiana, whether it be dealing with hurricanes or floods. We're going to pull resources from other attorney generals who may have experience with things such as wildfires, mass shootings, like what occurred over in Las Vegas. And we're going to have a discussion in a way to try to help us understand what are the best ways to handle these situations.
Right. Now, I read an article the other day, and this is prompting me for this question that I'm setting up now, is the 2019 governor's race.
That kind of falls into disaster management, right?
it could be a disaster.
Or crisis management, I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Are you in or out?
Well, here's the thing. I got a phone call from Greg Hilbert, who asked me the question as to whether or not I was interested in the race. I am interested and love the job that I'm doing. That's first and foremost. Right. I like it. And I have really put off the answer to that question and tried to turn people away, waiting for one candidate to present themselves. Like I told Greg, I have found myself disagreeing with the governor more than agreeing with him. That's problematic, right? When I go out on a campaign trail, I tell voters, I ask them for their vote, not because they're going to agree with me 100% of the time, but that they're going to be agreeing with me more than they're disagreeing with me. What I find out there is that voters are starting to get some anxiety in the fact that they don't believe that the state is headed in the right direction. They don't believe that our economy is growing certainly on par with the rest of the country. They're not benefiting from Trump economics, right? And a lot of them feel like I do, and it's because of the policies and the leadership of the governor. So what I'm saying is that if someone is interested in running for governor, we need to find that particular person so that we can go out there and give the voters a choice and say, guess what? There is a choice. If you don't like the direction that the state has been headed, if you don't like the leadership that's out there now that the governor is giving, here is someone who has a different vision and a way forward for giving those Louisianans a better direction, giving them a choice.
Right. So the answer is you might be in. It's still
What I'm saying is I'm certainly considering it now based upon the feedback that I'm getting from voters out there.
We'll move on to the federal case against Louisiana's death penalty, challenging Louisiana's death penalty. Are you going to rejoin that case and put your DOJ attorneys back on that case?
Well, that's going to be dependent upon whether the governor's going to answer the question or not as to whether or not he supports the death penalty. You know, we're not going to exhaust the resources of this office and the limited treasure that the legislature gives us trying to pursue a case if the governor doesn't support the death penalty. So once he answers that question, we'll determine whether or not we'll join that case again. However, for those victims' families that are out there that have been waiting for justice, we got over 70 people on death row now. We haven't executed someone since 2010. There are absolutely paths forward so that we can get these executions back on schedule. But it's gonna depend upon the governor making a decision. So we're waiting on him.
All right, we're out of time. General Andrea, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more This Week in Louisiana Politics.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. An effort is underway in Washington to require food stamp recipients to work. It's a divisive issue debated fiercely on Capitol Hill. U.S. Senator John Kennedy, a Republican from Louisiana, is for the work requirements, telling his fellow lawmakers on the Senate floor last week that government assistance was designed to be an off-ramp to help people leave poverty in their tracks, but it's become a parking lot. Kennedy wants legislation attached to the Farm Bill that would make the requirements law. We'll keep an eye on that legislation and update you on its progress as well. Now, Senator Kennedy also weighed in on the current state of affairs regarding the Russian investigation. President Trump has issued his most direct call yet to end it. Is that a direct order, or was he just blowing off steam on Twitter? Of course, Tracy Potts has the latest from Washington.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now, President Trump tweeted.
Clearly, this statement is serious and substantial evidence of criminal intent.
It's not an order, it's the president's opinion.
The New York Times reports Robert Mueller's Russia team is scrutinizing the president's tweets.
Every time there's a new tweet, they put another tab in their file and say, you know, this is evidence piece number 647.
Examining whether tweets plus private pressure on top justice officials like Attorney General Jeff Sessions equals obstruction of justice. Sessions joking about it.
He can send out orders pretty quick, you know, and he's serious about it.
The president's lawyer insists the Russia investigation needs to end.
Put up or shut up. What do you got? We have every reason to believe they don't have anything.
Republicans agree.
I think Mueller should finish his work.
The longer this thing goes on, by the thing I mean the investigation, the more spin there's going to be.
The last piece could be an interview with Mr. Trump himself. The Times reports he's still pushing for it against his lawyer's advice.
That was Tracy Potts reporting. Now, the president has made several campaign stops this week where he also discussed that investigation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is your local election headquarters.
Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics. I'm Fred Childers. I'll see you next Sunday right here on your local election headquarters.